Hey guys, tonight we're drifting into the draftiest corners of the past, places where the wallpaper peels, the wind howls, and the tea is always cold. That's right, we're talking about the world of pretty maids in Victorian mansions, the unsung heroines who scrubbed, polished, fluffed, and occasionally fainted on the fainting couch, not from romance, but from inhaling too much floor wax. This isn't Downton Abbey. This is the real, creaky, slightly haunted world behind the velvet curtains. So before you tuck yourself in with your 900 thread count sheets and Bluetooth sound machine, hit like and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy what I do here, and if you've got opinions on feather dusters versus Swiffers. Let me know in the comments. Now, dim those lights. Put a fan on for that nostalgic white noise, or just for the comfort of imagining you're not about to be called a girl by someone 3 years younger than you. And get cozy. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered, what really was a day like for a pretty maid? Was she just a background extra? Or did she have her own drama? Did maids ever actually enjoy polishing silver? Or was it all passive-aggressive sighing? Why did every Victorian house seem to be designed with maximum staircases and minimum bathrooms? How many ways can you ruin a fancy dinner party before you're exiled to the scullery forever? Could you survive a week in starched black and white, fueled only by weak tea, fear, and the vague hope of a day off? And just how much did they know about the family's secrets? Was the butler really in charge? Could you tell who was about to get fired by the tone of the dinner gong? And is it true that being a pretty maid was basically the original reality TV, minus the confessional booth but plus 700% more dust? Congratulations! You've just woken up in a Victorian mansion. It's 1875. You're wearing a starched uniform you don't remember the last time you sat down, and someone's ringing a bell somewhere. It's probably for you. Good luck. The house is silent, the sky barely grey, and your eyes creak open to the sound of the maid's bell. A sound so Pavlovian it now triggers nightmares about half-cooked porridge. You have approximately 7 minutes to dress. Tie your apron, and make your hair look neat but not too ambitious. The floors are freezing. The air is thick with candle wax and last night's cabbage. Welcome to another day in service. Let's talk about those 7 minutes. For most people, 7 minutes is the length of a quick shower, or maybe 2 minutes of scrolling on your phone 5 times in a row. For you, it's a full-blown speed trial. A race against time with nothing but a candle stub, a fraying hair ribbon, and the existential dread of being late. You fumble through the darkness, pulling on your stiff, nearly frozen uniform, trying to avoid the mysterious puddle by the door that, judging by the smell, definitely wasn't there last night. There's no snooze button, just the threat of the housekeeper's sharp knock and sharper tongue. You work quietly, because silence is golden, especially when the mistress hasn't had her tea yet. Every board in the attic groans with your footsteps, threatening to wake the other maids. You hold your breath, toes curled against the cold, as you lace up your boots, knowing that if you're the last one out of bed, your entire day will be spent atoning for this original sin. You try to brush your hair with a comb that lost half its teeth 2 owners ago. A neat appearance is everything. Not too fancy, not too plain, just enough to avoid comment. If you're lucky, you remember to check for a stray bit of fluff on your collar. If you're unlucky, you'll hear about it at breakfast, probably in front of everyone. Downstairs, the house remains in that peculiar half-life of dawn, where everything feels slightly haunted and more than a little chilly. You move quickly, padding down endless, creaking flights of stairs, designed, apparently, by someone who hated sleep and wanted to maximize leg day. Every step is a gamble. Too fast, and you'll trip over your own skirt. too slow, and the housekeeper will materialize behind you with a sigh that says, "I expected disappointment, but not this early." You wonder, not for the first time, if the architects of Victorian mansions were secretly paid by the stare. Once in the kitchen, the air is warmer, thick with the aroma of coal smoke and yesterday's bread. The scullery maid is already up, sleeves rolled, boiling water for tea, and muttering quietly about her lot in life. You nod in sympathy. Though words are risky before sunrise, someone always remembers. Your job is to start the day's fire, which involves wrestling with a stubborn grate, blackening your fingers, and hoping the chimney doesn't cough a cloud of soot onto your freshly scrubbed apron. There's a hierarchy here, and the order you arrive in determines who gets first crack at the good jobs. Laying the fires, fetching the coal, or, if you're late, cleaning out last night's chamber pots. With the fires lit and water set to boil, you prepare the morning trays. Teacups that must be spotless, a pot of tea that must be just so, and, if you value your job, the mistress's favourite spoon placed at exactly the right angle. There's a brief, sacred minute when you and the other maids share a sliver of bread or, if you're lucky, a bit of jam. This is your breakfast, eaten standing, in silence, with one ear tuned to the bells and the other to the cook's warnings about making crumbs on her clean floor. Soon enough, the house begins to stir. You hear the first rustle of skirts above, the distant click of the master's boots, and the unmistakable whine of a child who has just remembered he dislikes mornings, his governess, and possibly you. You check your uniform one last time, smooth your apron, and brace yourself for the onslaught of orders, lists, and requests that will fill every waking moment. All this, and the sun hasn't even risen, and so you begin again. Another day measured out in tasks, footsteps, and the eternal hope that, just once, someone will invent a job with fewer stairs and slightly more sleep. Until then, you keep moving, quietly, efficiently, always one bell ring away from disaster. The house is still, a sleeping beast of velvet and varnished wood, but you're already up and moving, a shadow in a black dress, blending into the wallpaper like a nervous ghost. This is the part of your day where you must perfect the ancient and noble art of getting somewhere quickly without ever making a sound. It's a skill learned over months of humiliation. The first time you clattered across the hall in borrowed boots, the second time you toppled a vase your week's wages couldn't possibly replace, and the third time you received the look from the housekeeper, a glance so icy it could curdle the cream. You glide, you tiptoe, you shuffle. The trick is in the ankles, knees bent, toes pointed out, feet placed heel to toe like you're auditioning for the world's most underfunded ballet. But this ballet has higher stakes and no music. Only the occasional snore from behind a closed door, the faint ticking of a grandfather clock, and the ever-present threat of running into someone who'd rather not see you. Which, in Victorian society, is nearly everyone above stairs. Your first job is to deliver hot water to the bedrooms. You cradle the heavy jug with both hands, arms aching, praying not to slosh a drop onto the polished floor. If you do, it's a race to mop it up before the footman sees. And trust, the footman always sees. He's lurking at the corner, dusting non-existent specks, secretly hoping you'll make a mistake. It's a house-wide sport, really. Spot the maid messing up. The winner gets the satisfaction of a raised eyebrow, and the blank loser, a morning of humiliation. The hallway itself is a challenge. Carpets are plush but uneven, with hidden lumps that threaten to upend you at every step. Creaky floorboards lie in ambush, memorized only by those who've spent countless dawns mapping the safe route. There's that one spot outside the blue bedroom. Step too close to the wall, and the entire wing wakes to a sound like a whale sighing. A disaster you won't repeat unless you have a fondness for polishing banisters as penance. As you dart from room to room, you avoid direct eye contact with the ancestral portraits. Some are kindly, most are menacing, and a few seem to be judging your posture. Did that one's monocle just wiggle? You make a note to check your reflection in the next brass candlestick, just in case. The butler has been known to scold for slovenly appearances, which, translated, means your hair has rebelled in a direction not sanctioned by the household manual. You make a game of timing your hallway sprints. How long does it take to reach the green bedroom and back before the mistress calls? Today, it's 23 seconds, a personal best, and just fast enough to snag the good side of the bread at the next kitchen break. At the grand staircase, you hesitate. This is where many a maid has met her downfall, literally. Each step is a polished slide, greased by years of beeswax and hope. You grip the banister, descend, and pray that if you do tumble, you'll land on something soft, like the rug, and not on something breakable, like your future. Every so often, you hear footsteps ahead and must flatten yourself against the wallpaper. Sometimes it's another maid, arms full of linens. Sometimes it's the housekeeper, prowling for infractions. Worst of all is the unexpected guest, emerging early, in a nightcap, demanding tea, or worse, conversation. You master the art of polite invisibility, nodding just enough to acknowledge existence, but not enough to startle the nobility. There's a rumour that once a maid made actual eye contact with Lady Fotheringay before breakfast. She was never seen again. When you finally reach the end of the upstairs wing, you exhale. You've made it. Hot water delivered, trays in place, and no porcelain casualties. The house remains asleep, the secret still tucked in bed, and your shoes, blessedly, remain scuff-free. All that's left is to do it again, and again, and again. Welcome to the relentless, acrobatic, utterly unappreciated world of the silent hallway sprint. Part endurance race, part stealth mission, always one step away from chaos. Before the family even dreams of opening their eyes, you're already elbow deep in the most glamorous of morning tasks. Chamber pots. Yes, the porcelain thrones that are, in fact, not thrones at all. Just reminders that plumbing in the Victorian mansion is mostly decorative, like the family's collection of unread Greek poetry. Handling chamber pots isn't a job for the faint of heart or the weak of stomach. It's a daily test of strength, balance, and emotional detachment, a sort of Olympic event for the underappreciated. Your approach to the bedroom is tactical. You pray no one is awake, especially not the master, who once startled you mid-empty with a polite cough and a request for another blanket, if you please. It is a strange intimacy, this pre-dawn ballet, tiptoeing into the private worlds of people who barely know your name but trust you with their most personal exports. You've learned to move swiftly but silently, cradling the chamber pot like it's a sleeping child you hope won't wake. If you bump it, it will slosh. If you drop it, you will wish for the earth to swallow you whole. The trick is all in the wrist. A seasoned maid can carry 2 chamber pots in one hand while balancing a pitcher of hot water in the other, all while navigating 3 flights of stairs and a labyrinth of sleeping dogs. The rookie mistake is swinging the pot. That's how you end up with an impromptu mop job and a reputation for careless tendencies. You master a stoic face, because nothing betrays a novice quicker than a nose wrinkled in horror or a mouth breathing through a sleeve. You develop a 6th sense for which chamber pots are the danger zones. The master after a late supper, the youngest child after a contraband plum, or, on the worst days, the house guest with a delicate constitution. Outside, the winter air bites, and the only thing colder than your hands on the iron handle is the prospect of being seen by another servant while carrying your fragrant cargo. You move quickly through the back passage, wishing for invisibility, always bracing for the moment when the butler sweeps by, face stony, as if he doesn't also need his pot emptied. There's an unspoken hierarchy even among bodily functions. In the scullery, the true work begins. The chamber pots are emptied, rinsed, and scrubbed, each with its own brush, kept separate from everything remotely food-related. At least in theory, after last week's mix-up, you now double-check everything twice. The scent is indescribable. A mingling of lye soap, yesterday's cabbage, and whatever else the household consumed. The window is always open, regardless of the weather, and the scullery maid gives you a sympathetic nod as you wield your brush with something approaching dignity. If you're lucky, no one notices your work. If you're unlucky, someone comments on the freshness of their pot. On rare, unlucky mornings, the family rises early, catching you mid-scrub. There's no training for this moment. You just keep scrubbing, eyes down, cheeks burning, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. It's a strange paradox. The more invisible you are, the better you've done. The only evidence of your labor should be a faint whiff of lavender water left behind, if you can spare the real stuff. Otherwise, it's just hope and determination. Back upstairs, you return the find, pots, lids on, handles polished, as if nothing happened. There's an art to this too, aligning the handles, tucking the pots beneath the beds at the exact angle, and never ever commenting on the contents, no matter how much you want to warn someone away. The family will never know how close disaster came, or how many heroic saves you made in the name of discretion. And that's how, day after day, you earn your gold medal in the least glamorous event of all. Chamber pot duty. Silently heroic, eternally thankless, and a daily reminder that in Victorian service, your most essential work is the work nobody wants to talk about. Before the rest of the house has even considered waking up, before the children shriek, before the master coughs, before the mistress's bell rings with the urgency of someone discovering a spot on a napkin, there is a moment of sanctuary in the kitchen. This is not the kitchen you see in cookbooks, all sunlight and fresh bread. This is the pre-dawn domain of the staff. Cold stone floors, the faint gleam of embers in the stove, and a table that's already sticky with yesterday's jam. Here, a quiet tradition unfolds, as necessary and mysterious as a secret society, the early morning tea. You join the others, faces still lined with pillow creases and dreams of a better life, or at least a longer sleep. There are no pleasantries. Talking before the first cup is considered a workplace hazard. Instead, there's a hushed camaraderie as you shuffle in, clutching your chipped mug like it's made of gold. The only light comes from a flickering oil lamp, and the glow of the range. Everything feels suspended, as if the house itself is holding its breath, waiting for the onslaught of orders, scoldings, and impossible tasks. The tea is strong, dark, and, if the scullery maid is feeling generous, made with more than just the third rinsing of yesterday's leaves. The hierarchy reveals itself here too. The cook's mug is the largest and is always filled first. The butler, if he condescends to join, drinks from bone china. Everyone else has whatever is left, chipped or stained, or, if you're unlucky, still faintly scented of onions from last night's soup. Sugar is rare, hoarded like treasure, and woe betide the maid who takes more than her ration. There's always one. She's been noted, her crime quietly recorded for future payback. In this fragile piece, you have a minute to just be. You wrap your hands around your mug, letting the heat seep into your bones. For a fleeting moment, you are not a uniform, a moving shadow, or the subject of someone's complaint. You are simply tired and alive and grateful for the pause. Someone tears off a bit of crust from yesterday's loaf, dipping it in tea to soften it into something almost edible. The cook mutters about the state of the larder. The footman, yawning, tries not to burn his tongue, and you catch the kitchen maid eyeing the jam jar, calculating whether she can sneak an extra spoonful without being caught. This is where alliances are made, grievances whispered, and the day's secret strategies are mapped out. Who's on the bad side of the housekeeper this week? Who's in danger of being caught with pilfered biscuits? Which guest has brought a dog that bites? You exchange looks, silent messages more eloquent than words. Watch out for the mistress today. The master's in a mood. The children are plotting. The dog has found the butter. There is always something to worry about. But at least for now, you worry together. The kettle whistles. Someone curses softly, and a second round is poured. Weaker, but still welcome. Outside, the sky is beginning to pale. In a few minutes, the house will shudder awake. Bells will clang, shoes will thud, orders will descend like rain. But here, in this secret morning ritual, you are safe for just a heartbeat longer. Someone tells a joke, quietly, carefully, about the butler's toupee. And for a moment, everyone grins, complicit. The laughter is soft, but it feels like rebellion, like proof that you are more than your duties. You check the clock. Nearly time. The cups are drained, crumbs brushed away, faces steeled for battle. With a final swallow, you set your mug aside, smoothing your apron and gathering yourself. The peace is over. The day is coming, loud and demanding. But you step out of the kitchen a little warmer, bolstered by the solidarity of the secret society, ready to face whatever fresh madness awaits. In a world of endless rules, it's these small moments that keep you human. The uniform, a symbol of respectability, discipline, and the Victorian house's insatiable hunger for order. From the moment you entered service, you traded your name for a title, maid, and your individuality for a uniform as strict and unforgiving as the housekeeper's glare. Each morning, you slip into layers of tradition and discomfort, buttoning yourself into a costume designed not for ease or personal expression but for the silent performance of obedience. Black, starched, and, on a good day, almost matching. Let's begin with the material. The basic dress is black wool or cotton, heavy in winter, and even heavier in summer. The Victorians had many theories about health, but breathable fabrics wasn't one of them. On a July afternoon, your uniform absorbs the sun and your sweat until you're essentially steaming like a Christmas pudding left on the windowsill. In the winter, the same dress is somehow thinner than common sense, the icy air sliding between the seams and chilling you straight to the marrow. The best you can hope for is an extra petticoat, or, if the laundry's caught up, a woolen shawl for those brief moments you're allowed outside. Over your dress goes the apron, white, starched until it can practically stand on its own. The apron isn't just a layer of fabric, it's a canvas for judgment. Spotless? You might survive the morning inspection. A smudge of soot, a splash of tea, a trace of yesterday's jam, each one a mark against your character. If you have ever felt self-conscious about a coffee stain on your shirt during a Zoom meeting, imagine knowing your whole future rests on a smudge of marmalade and a housekeeper with eagle vision. Then, the collar and cuffs, starched, scratchy, and cut so precisely tight you wonder if they were designed to restrict airflow as a means of enforcing humility. The act of buttoning your collar is a daily meditation on the limits of human patience. You fasten each button, tucking your chin, eyes watering from the effort and the not-so-faint smell of starch. The cuffs, meanwhile, are so snug, you briefly consider what life would be like as a wristless person. Of course, the real villain of the uniform is the petticoat, supposed to create a modest, flowing silhouette. It is in reality a relentless tangle of fabric that wraps around your knees, trips you up on staircases, and tries to escape every time you bend over. By midday, you have become a master at the awkward squat, a necessity for lifting fallen forks, wrangling escaped kittens, or simply retrieving your dignity from under the sideboard. No detail is too small to escape the housekeeper's notice. Socks must be black and pulled high. Shoes must be polished to a faintly ridiculous shine, even though the only thing that sees them is the kitchen cat. Hair must be pulled back in a bun so tight it's a minor miracle you can still blink. Heaven help you if a single strand escapes and lands in the master's soup. There's a weekly ritual of laundry, starching, and ironing so intense that modern dry cleaners would cry. On laundry day, you risk your fingertips to boiling water and clouds of steam, all for the privilege of wearing the world's least comfortable armor. Uniforms serve another purpose: erasing individuality. The better you blend in with the wallpaper, the more you're praised. Smartly turned out means you've made yourself invisible, a moving fixture, an extra in the grand production that is upper-class Victorian life. There are no bold colors, no fancy pins, no jewelry, unless you want to be accused of airs and graces. If you catch yourself admiring a patterned ribbon or a bright button, remember, joy is for Sundays and the rich. By the end of the day, your uniform bears witness to your labor, creases, stains, the faint scent of polish and potatoes. You peel it off with relief, folding it carefully, knowing tomorrow you'll don it again, starched, black, and never quite comfortable, but proof that you belong, even if only as a ghost in the hallways of someone else's home. There's a moment, just after sunrise, when the Victorian mansion appears almost pristine, beams of golden light slanting through stained glass windows, glinting off polished wood, and catching the gentle swirl of dust you just spent the last hour trying to eliminate. Welcome to the never-ending war. You versus the dirt, dust, and mysterious grime that materialize overnight as if summoned by some malicious house spirit. In this house, cleanliness isn't just next to godliness, it's next to impossible. Your first opponent, dust. It gathers on every flat surface, clings to banisters, and lurks behind vases that weigh as much as a toddler. You start in the drawing room, where the family's heirlooms are displayed with pride and absolutely zero thought for ease of cleaning. There's the clock with the impossible-to-reach crevices, the ever-present china figurines, and of course, the crystal decanter collection, each one a fragile trap waiting for a clumsy hand. You wield your feather duster with the precision of a surgeon and the resignation of someone who knows she'll be back tomorrow. You work quietly, methodically, always dusting top to bottom. That's rule one. Otherwise, gravity becomes your enemy, undoing your labor with every careless swipe. There's a technique to it, a rhythm: dust, tap, shake, sigh. The duster is your wand, but unlike in fairy tales, nothing stays enchanted for long. Somewhere, always, a layer of dust escapes you, especially on the high shelves, which only the housekeeper inspects, and only when she's feeling particularly judgmental. After dusting comes polishing, and here the fun really begins. Brass candlesticks, copper pans, silver trays, each one demanding its own special paste, rag, and ritual. You learn the alchemy of household maintenance. Beeswax for wood, vinegar for glass, elbow grease for everything else. Sometimes, you question your life choices as you buff a doorknob for the third time this week, squinting to see your own increasingly tired reflection. If you can see your face in it, you're nearly done, the butler says. If you can see your soul, you've been polishing too long. The smell of beeswax and polish lingers on your hands long after the work is done, a scent you'll forever associate with fatigue and faint pride. You move from room to room, wiping away fingerprints and scuffs, always watching for the telltale mark of a muddy paw or a sticky child. The house is full of enemies: the family's spaniel, whose tail is a dust mop of disaster, and the youngest child, who sees your gleaming sideboard as the perfect canvas for her sticky jam fingers. Sometimes, it's not just dust or smudges, but full-on filth. There are mysterious stains on the stair runner, origin debated, solution unclear. You attempt to erase them with soap, water, and desperate optimism. Occasionally, the stain wins. The housekeeper makes a note in her ledger, and you make a mental note to try again tomorrow, perhaps with stronger soap or a quiet prayer to the patron saint of upholstery. Let's not forget the final battle, the floors. Every inch of tile, wood, and carpet must gleam, or at least not squelch. You sweep, mop, and sometimes crawl on your hands and knees, hunting crumbs with the dedication of a bloodhound. Every once in a while, you find a coin, a button, or a lost earring, little treasures in the trenches. By the time the family descends, the house sparkles, at least on the surface. The war is never truly won, only fought anew each day. You take a moment, surveying your handiwork, before the next wave of dust settles in, and you sigh, duster in hand, ready to start all over again. The battle never ends, but at least you're winning small victories, one polished candlestick at a time. Breakfast in a Victorian mansion is less a meal and more an exercise in choreography, a ritual of clinking porcelain, murmured greetings, and suppressed disaster. For you, it begins long before anyone else stirs. While the family dreams of scones and soft-boiled eggs, you're already downstairs, hair neat, apron immaculate, clutching a tray like a gladiator ready for battle. The kitchen is the war room. The cook presides at the stove with a wooden spoon scepter, ruling over bubbling pots, sizzling bacon, and the ever-present threat of burning the porridge. Every morning the menu is the same: eggs, bread, bacon, tea, possibly a kipper if the household is feeling continental. Simple, in theory. But the reality is chaos disguised as routine. The scullery maid drops a plate. The footman blames the new boy for the missing cutlery. You realize someone forgot to order milk again. The only thing standing between this and full-blown mutiny is a steaming kettle and everyone's collective fear of the housekeeper. You assemble the family's trays with trembling precision. Each cup, saucer, and spoon must be in exactly the right place. 1 centimeter off and you'll never hear the end of it. The sugar bowl goes left, the butter dish right, toast stacked in a little pyramid like a carbohydrate monument. You check and recheck everything. Haunted by the memory of the orange marmalade incident when you put the preserves on the wrong tray, and nearly sparked a diplomatic crisis between the master and his brother-in-law. Once the trays are set, it's time for the silent procession. Up the main staircase, through the hall, to the breakfast room. You move quietly, trying not to jostle the contents, desperately hoping you don't sneeze. The doors must be opened with just the right amount of ceremony. Too loud, and you'll wake the dog. Too soft, and you'll be accused of slipping about. You enter, head bowed, eyes lowered, aiming for invisibility. Breakfast service is all about timing. The master likes his tea poured precisely 3 minutes after sitting. The mistress prefers her toast crisp but not browned. The children, when present, require elaborate negotiations. Milk warm but not hot. Jam spread thin as air. Crusts banished to the far corners of the table. You are expected to anticipate needs before they are voiced, to refill, replace, and clear with a sixth sense honed by fear and repetition. In these early hours, conversation is minimal. The family reads the newspaper in silence, making only the occasional comment about the weather or the state of the Morning Post. Your job is to stand at attention by the sideboard, motionless except for the discreet refill of teacups or the retrieval of a fallen fork. You become an expert at listening without appearing to listen, catching hints of scandal, gossip, or the day's plans. Knowledge that you will never, under any circumstances, repeat. Sometimes things go wrong. A sneeze escapes, a spoon clatters to the floor. Once you serve the wrong jam and the master's eyebrow arches just enough to curdle your blood. In these moments, time seems to freeze. The butler's lips twitch in disapproval. The housekeeper makes a mental note. You apologize, correct your mistake, and try not to burst into flames from the embarrassment. When the meal is finished, the family rises and glides out, leaving half-eaten eggs and crumbs as evidence of their passing. You swoop in, clearing plates with practiced efficiency, stacking everything just so for the journey back to the kitchen. The dining room, once tense and formal, now feels oddly empty. A stage after the play. The actor's gone. Breakfast is over. The calm before the day's real chaos, errands, bells, and impossible lists descends. For one brief, shining moment, you survived the gauntlet of eggs and etiquette. Tomorrow, it all begins again. And you'll be ready, tray in hand, bracing for whatever storms await. Silence is golden in the Victorian mansion. But sometimes it's also an iron rule, enforced with a glare from the housekeeper or a raised eyebrow from the butler. For a maid, words are rationed even more strictly than sugar. In the presence of the family, your voice is meant to be used as sparingly as the good napkins, reserved for absolute emergencies or polite, monosyllabic responses. The solution? You become a master of nonverbal communication, skilled in an entire language built out of glances, nods, and, above all, the eyebrow raise. The training is unspoken and relentless. The first time you blurt out, "Excuse me, ma'am," you get the look. A blend of astonishment and horror, as if you'd announced the house was on fire because someone left a teapot slightly ajar. The next time, you're silent as the grave. But now the challenge is making your point understood. Enter the eyebrow, your new best friend. Within a week, you learn to signal everything with a flick, arch, or subtle twitch. A single raised brow means, "Did you see that?" Two means danger, housekeeper approaching. A quick glance with a tiny lift signals, "Yes, I heard the bell." And no, I'm not going to be the first to answer it. Your face becomes a finely tuned instrument, capable of conveying sarcasm, warning, support, and the faintest hint of "not it" in the eternal game of avoiding the trickiest chores. It's a silent camaraderie, a secret dialogue running beneath the surface of daily life. When the family is at table and the youngest spills his tea for the third time, you and the kitchen maid share a micro-expression that says, "Here we go again." If the master asks for his usual and no one is sure what that means today, a glance is exchanged. Eyebrows up, eyes wide, an unspoken, "Any ideas?" It's the Victorian equivalent of a group chat, but with more starch and less typing. This talent isn't just limited to the servants' hall. Even in the grandest rooms, the butler orchestrates the staff with a mere lift of his formidable brow. Now is the moment for refills. Now is the time to clear. Now you must absolutely pretend you didn't just trip over the corner of the rug. You become an expert at reading faces as well as presenting your own. When the housekeeper's eyebrow twitches, you know it's time to look busy, even if you have to invent a reason to be furiously dusting the same vase for the 5th time that morning. Sometimes, the non-verbal messages become almost a game. There's the challenge of making the scullery maid laugh during a dreary stretch of silver polishing, achieved with just the right roll of your eyes and an exaggerated quirk of your brow. The footman, for his part, communicates disdain for particularly heavy luggage, with a series of increasingly melodramatic sighs and eyebrow acrobatics. If the family only knew how much was being said in their presence, they might reconsider the rules of silence, or, more likely, double down. Of course, there's danger in misinterpretation. A misplaced smirk can be read as insolence, a frown as judgment, a twitch at the wrong moment as outright rebellion. There's always the risk that the mistress will catch a stray expression and assign you to polish the silverware cupboard, alone, in silence, for the next 3 hours. So you learn subtlety, perfecting the art of keeping a straight face even as chaos erupts around you. By evening, when the family retires and the staff finally has a moment to breathe, there's a brief, blessed return to words. Over a shared mug of weak tea, you recount the day's dramas, your stories punctuated by exaggerated brows and knowing looks. It's then you realize, in a world where silence is demanded, you've developed a voice all your own, one eyebrow raise at a time. If the mansion above stairs is a world of polished silver, perfect manners, and whispered secrets, then below stairs is an entirely different universe, one with its own rules, customs, and legends. The servants' hall is the bustling heart of this hidden realm, a place both fiercely hierarchical and strangely democratic, where alliances are made, grievances aired, and gossip spreads faster than spilled tea across a starched apron. The descent from the grand staircase to the servants' domain is a passage between realities. The floors lose their gleam, the wallpaper gives way to scrubbed plaster, and the light is a little dimmer, flickering from oil lamps and the glow of the kitchen range. Down here, the air is thick with the scent of baking bread, roasting meats, boiling laundry, and sometimes, on a bad day, a hint of blocked drain. If the drawing room is the brain of the house, the world below stairs is its grumbling, churning stomach. At the center of this universe is the servants' hall, a long table flanked by battered chairs, each one fiercely defended by its rightful owner. This is where the daily meals are shared. Quickly, disputes are settled, sometimes loudly, and the complicated pecking order is enforced with the efficiency of a Victorian tax collector. At the head of the table sits the butler, ruler of the underworld, resplendent in waistcoat and a perpetual air of silent judgment. Next to him, the housekeeper, keeper of rules, lists, and everyone's last nerve. The rest of the staff arrange themselves according to status and experience. The cook sits as close to the range as possible, claiming her right to warmth and first dibs on whatever's baking. The senior housemaids cluster together, forming an impenetrable wall of starch and shared experience, while new maids and kitchen boys hover at the fringes, hoping to avoid notice until they've proven themselves worthy, or at least capable of brewing a decent cup of tea. Conversation below stairs is fast and lively, a swirling blend of gossip, advice, complaints, and, occasionally, actual news from the outside world. Everyone knows who's in the house, who's leaving, who broke the blue vase, and which visiting relative snores so loudly you can hear it through 3 floors and a brick wall. Information is currency, and stories are traded with the skill of professional diplomats, though always with an eye on the door in case the butler appears, ready to restore order with a cough or a glance. Discipline is strict, but camaraderie runs deep. Rivalries simmer, kitchen versus housemaids, footman versus hallboy. But when an outside threat appears, a surprise inspection, a sickly guest, or, heaven forbid, a new housekeeper with fresh ideas, everyone closes ranks with a loyalty as fierce as any regiment. There are inside jokes, whispered alliances, and the occasional clandestine romance, hidden in broom closets or under the stairs. Secrets are kept, mostly. Betrayals are remembered, always. Down here, the rules are both simpler and more complicated. Hard work is expected, lateness is punished, and stealing is a cardinal sin, unless it's the last scone, and then it's just tradition. Everyone dreams of a better posting, kinder employers, or, just maybe, a promotion to head housemaid or cook. For now, survival depends on wit, endurance, and knowing when to keep your head down. When the day is done, and the family above retires to their plush beds, the world below stairs exhales. There's laughter, whispered dreams, and, if the cook is feeling generous, a treat snuck from the larder. It's not a world of luxury, but it is a world of its own. A mysterious, chaotic, loyal community that keeps the grand house running. And while you may never see your name etched in silver, below stairs, you belong. If the mansion above stairs is a world of polished silver, perfect manners, and whispered secrets, then below stairs is an entirely different universe, one with its own rules, customs, and legends. The servants' hall is the bustling heart of this hidden realm, a place both fiercely hierarchical and strangely democratic, where alliances are made, grievances aired, and gossip spreads faster than spilled tea across a starched apron. The descent from the grand staircase to the servants' domain is a passage between realities. The floors lose their gleam, the wallpaper gives way to scrubbed plaster, and the light is a little dimmer, flickering from oil lamps and the glow of the kitchen range. Down here, the air is thick with the scent of baking bread, roasting meats, boiling laundry, and sometimes, on a bad day, a hint of blocked drain. If the drawing room is the brain of the house, the world below stairs is its grumbling, churning stomach. At the center of this universe is the servants' hall, a long table flanked by battered chairs, each one fiercely defended by its rightful owner. This is where the daily meals are shared, quickly. Disputes are settled, sometimes loudly, and the complicated pecking order is enforced with the efficiency of a Victorian tax collector. At the head of the table sits the butler, ruler of the underworld, resplendent in waistcoat and a perpetual air of silent judgment. Next to him, the housekeeper, keeper of rules, lists, and everyone's last nerve. The rest of the staff arrange themselves according to status and experience. The cook sits as close to the range as possible, claiming her right to warmth and first dibs on whatever's baking. The senior housemaids cluster together, forming an impenetrable wall of starch and shared experience, while new maids and kitchen boys hover at the fringes, hoping to avoid notice until they've proven themselves worthy, or at least capable of brewing a decent cup of tea. Conversation below stairs is fast and lively, a swirling blend of gossip, advice, complaints, and, occasionally, actual news from the outside world. Everyone knows who's in the house, who's leaving, who broke the blue vase, and which visiting relative snores so loudly you can hear it through 3 floors and a brick wall. Information is currency, and stories are traded with the skill of professional diplomats, though always with an eye on the door in case the butler appears, ready to restore order with a cough or a glance. Discipline is strict, but camaraderie runs deep. Rivalries simmer, kitchen versus housemaids, footman versus hall boy. But when an outside threat appears, a surprise inspection, a sickly guest, or, heaven forbid, a new housekeeper with fresh ideas, everyone closes ranks with a loyalty as fierce as any regiment. There are inside jokes, whispered alliances, and the occasional clandestine romance, hidden in broom closets or under the stairs. Secrets are kept, mostly. Betrayals are remembered, always. Down here, the rules are both simpler and more complicated. Hard work is expected, lateness is punished, and stealing is a cardinal sin, unless it's the last scone, and then it's just tradition. Everyone dreams of a better posting, kinder employers, or, just maybe, a promotion to head housemaid or cook. For now, survival depends on wit, endurance, and knowing when to keep your head down. When the day is done, and the family above retires to their plush beds. The world below stairs, exhales. There's laughter, whispered dreams, and, if the cook is feeling generous, a treat snuck from the larder. It's not a world of luxury, but it is a world of its own. A mysterious, chaotic, loyal community that keeps the grand house running. And while you may never see your name etched in silver, below stairs, you belong. Bath night. The phrase strikes both hope and dread into the heart of every Victorian maid. Once a dark week, whether you need it or not, and you probably do, the household schedules a ritual cleansing that's part hygiene, part social event, and part logistical nightmare. If you ever romanticize the idea of soaking in a clawfoot tub by candlelight, prepare for disappointment. In reality, it's less a spa day and more a feat of engineering, negotiation, and, occasionally, public spectacle. It all begins with the great water hall. There's no hot tap, just buckets, kettles, and the muscles you never knew you had. You and the other maids form a bucket brigade from the kitchen to the upstairs bathroom, or, for the truly unlucky, to a tub in the scullery. The journey is perilous. Every step is a balancing act. The floors are cold and slippery, and the risk of spillage is high. The punishment for dropping a bucket? At best, a sharp word from the housekeeper. At worst, you're sent to fetch another pail in the freezing dark. The water is boiled on the range, ladled carefully into the tub, and tested with a cautious finger. Too hot and you'll hear about it. Too cold and, well, you'll hear about that too. The first bather is usually the master of the house, whose bath water is pristine, just the right temperature, and occasionally scented with expensive soap. The rest of the family follows, one by one, with decreasing levels of heat and cleanliness. By the time the staff gets a turn, if there's any water left, you're less bathing and more marinating in the collective worries and whiskers of everyone who went before. Privacy is a rare commodity. Doors that don't quite latch, curtains that flutter in the draught, and a parade of people wanting towels, soap, or just to ask you when you'll be done. There's a constant negotiation. Who gets the second spot? The coveted, still warm, not yet murky slot. Who goes last? The unlucky turnip soup position, and who's tasked with scrubbing the tub when it's all over. Scandal lurks everywhere. There's always a story about a housemaid who lingered too long or was caught humming a tune in the bath, earning a week's worth of side-eye from the cook. The actual act of bathing is both hurried and ceremonial. You strip down, trying not to think about drafts, ghosts, or the portrait of Great Uncle Harold that seems to be judging you from the wall. The soap is harsh and utilitarian, none of your fancy lavender-scented stuff here, leaving your skin as squeaky as the tub itself. A quick rinse, a hasty scrub, and then you're out again, shivering and toweling off with something more threadbare than fluffy. There's a practical side to this ordeal: health. Bathing, so the medical minds of the day claimed, staved off everything from scurvy to melancholia. Of course, some still believed too much bathing was dangerous, so you're careful not to seem too enthusiastic. The cook reminds everyone of old Mrs. Penrose, who caught a chill after her third bath of the season and was never quite right again. But you know, deep down, that a good scrub is worth the risk. After the baths comes the cleanup, a task only slightly less daunting than the water hall itself. You dump out the murky water, scrub the tub, wring out the towels, and mop the floor, all while the housekeeper inspects for stray hairs or soap left behind. The final indignity, your hands, wrinkled and raw, the unmistakable mark of a working bath night. Still, when all is done, there's a sense of victory. A fleeting moment when you're cleaner than you've been all week. You collapse into bed, hair damp, muscles aching, but spirit just a little lighter. Bath night may be chaos, but it's also proof that sometimes survival is about small comforts and the hope of being slightly less grimy than yesterday. If there's a circle of hell reserved for lost souls who left their soup unfinished, it's located somewhere in the scullery, a steamy, chaotic realm where dirty dishes multiply and dignity comes to dry on a rack. This is where crockery goes after the feast, and where you, the scullery maid, wage a daily battle against mountains of greasy plates, chipped mugs, and cutlery that seems to breed overnight. Forget the glamour of the grand dining room. This is the real heart of the Victorian mansion, pulsing to the rhythm of clattering pots and muttered curses. The scullery sits just off the main kitchen, damp, dimly lit, and always at least a little bit slippery. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth, wood smoke, and the ghosts of meals past. Shelves groan under the weight of saucepans and pudding moulds, and the only sign of luxury is the occasional glint of a silver spoon someone accidentally tossed in with the pudding basin. A permanent haze of steam fogs the window, turning every sunrise into a blurry watercolor that only the most optimistic maid pretends is romantic. Your shift starts when the first dirty cup appears, usually the cook's, always with a mysterious ring around the bottom. Soon, the breakfast dishes come flooding in, porridge bowls glued with oats, teacups with the dregs still swirling, and toast racks carrying the ghosts of bread. You roll up your sleeves and plunge your hands into a sink of water so hot it could double as soup. The first burn is the worst. After that, your hands go pleasantly numb, and you can almost imagine you're wearing gloves. Washing up is both science and art. Lather the lye soap, scrub with a stiff brush, and hope that whatever stuck to the tureen comes off before you lose your will to live. Victorian soap, it should be said, is not gentle. It's a brick of caustic determination, stripping grease, colour, and occasionally skin. There's a strict order. Glasses first, then cups, then plates, then, only when there's no hope left, the pans, whose crusted insides tell the story of last week's stews and at least one failed pudding. Then comes rinsing, a process that involves juggling boiling water, a tin ladle, and the constant threat of splashing your apron, your shoes, or your already scoured hands. The rinsed dishes go onto the drying rack, a rickety, overburdened contraption that creaks ominously if you so much as breathe too hard near it. Once, you stacked the plates too quickly and watched in horror as half the pile slid, domino style, onto the stone floor. The cook didn't speak to you for 3 days. You now stack with the precision of a jeweler and the anxiety of someone on thin ice. There's a rhythm to scullery work, a relentless cycle broken only by the occasional crisis. Dropped crockery, a surprise visit from the butler, or the sudden, heart-stopping shriek of a rat behind the coal bin. Sometimes, if you're lucky, another maid will stop by for a quick gossip, and you'll exchange news, complaints, and darkly humorous theories about what's really lurking in the bottom of the soup pot. These moments of shared misery keep you sane. Once the mountain of dishes is cleared, you scrub the sink, sweep the flagstones, and empty the slops. The smell of boiled cabbage lingers, but there's a certain pride in a scullery restored to order. You survey your domain, arms aching, nails ragged, and realize you have survived another round in the eternal dishwashing derby. Of course, the peace is fleeting. Lunch looms, and with it, another tidal wave of plates, pots, and pans. But for now, you steal a moment to flex your fingers and maybe, if you're quick, nip a leftover crust from the breakfast tray. The scullery may be where dishes go to die, but it's also where maids learn what they're made of. Equal parts endurance, humor, and sheer, soapy stubbornness. It is a truth universally acknowledged, at least below stairs, that a maid in possession of a rumbling stomach must be in want of a snack. Unfortunately, in a Victorian mansion, food is both ever-present and maddeningly out of reach. The kitchen brims with roasting meats and fresh bread, but the best you can hope for is a scrap snatched in the moments between disasters. Welcome to the most dangerous sport in service, sneaking a bite without getting caught. The rules are unwritten but well understood. The cook owns the kitchen, the housekeeper owns your soul, and you own absolutely nothing, except perhaps a well-honed sense of timing. The penalties for snacking without permission range from a withering glare to immediate dismissal, depending on the mood of the kitchen and the severity of your crime. Was it just a crumb of biscuit? Or did you dare to pocket a slice of ham? It's a delicate calculation, balancing risk and reward, hunger and hope. The cook guards her larder like a dragon with gout. Every tin is inventoried, every pie counted, every leftover covered and marked. You've heard the stories. A maid caught with jam on her sleeve, a footman exiled for filching cheese. You become an expert at blending in, at looking both busy and completely uninterested in the cake cooling on the sideboard. Your peripheral vision sharpens. You can sense the approach of authority without even turning your head. You perfect the art of the accidental taste test, swiping a finger through spilled gravy, popping a crumb off the edge of the breadboard, or catching a runaway pea before it hits the floor. Timing is everything. The window for illicit snacking opens and closes in seconds. Perhaps the cook has gone to argue with the butler about the wine. Maybe the housekeeper is upstairs, berating someone for dust on the banister. In these rare, golden moments, you pounce. A quick nibble, nothing fancy, a sliver of cheese, a crust of bread, or, on the luckiest days, the last bit of bacon clinging to the pan. The taste is always better for being forbidden, though it's usually gone so quickly you barely register it before your heart resumes its regular rhythm. Of course, the hazards are legion. There's the threat of being caught red-handed. Literally, if jam is involved. There's the danger of taking a bite of something meant for the dog, who, by the way, enjoys a better cut of meat than most of the staff. Once, in a moment of desperation, you mistook a decorative fruit for the real thing, only to nearly chip a tooth on what turned out to be a cunningly painted wooden apple. You learn to sniff suspiciously, chew quietly, and always keep one ear tuned to footsteps on the flagstones. The camaraderie among the staff is built, in part, on these shared small rebellions. The kitchen maid slips you a crust in passing. You, in turn, warn her when the housekeeper is doing her rounds. Sometimes, a particularly kind footman forgets a heel of bread on the hall table. These tiny acts of solidarity mean more than any grand feast, binding the staff together in the unspoken understanding that everyone is, at their core, just a little bit hungry. When caught, the excuses are legendary. Just tidying up, ma'am. Testing for poison, sir. Saving it from the mouse. Some are believed, most are not. The housekeeper's eyes see everything, or so she claims. You live in constant, gentle fear of her appearing in the doorway at just the wrong moment. A slice of pie frozen mid-air between your hand and your mouth. But even with the risks, you persist. Hunger is patient, and so are you. Each stolen crumb is a minor victory, proof that you're not entirely beaten by the house's rules. High risk, low reward. But for a moment, as the flavor lingers, you remember what it feels like to claim something for yourself. And in the world of Victorian service, that's almost as good as a feast. Laundry day in a Victorian mansion is not an event. It's an ordeal, a weekly opera with a chorus of sighs, a score written in steam, and solos performed by aching backs and raw hands. The world above stairs may glide along in crisp linens and snow-white tablecloths, but the reality below stairs is measured out in pails, lye, and the slow, relentless destruction of your cuticles. If you've ever grumbled about a stubborn stain or a broken washing machine, rest assured, The Victorian maid's laundry day is the stuff of soapy legend. The dawn begins not with birdsong, but with the housekeeper's voice echoing through the halls. Laundry. You and your fellow maids descend on the linen cupboards, hauling baskets stuffed with sheets, towels, nightshirts, and the occasional mystery sock that somehow evaded last week's wash. Each item must be counted, logged, and checked for marks. A polite euphemism for the kind of stains that make you wonder if the master has been wrestling geese, or if the youngest child has taken up experimental jam art. The washing itself is a complicated dance involving cauldrons of boiling water, buckets of icy rinse, and enormous bars of harsh soap. The kitchen range is commandeered for the entire day, boiling water by the gallon. You roll up your sleeves, brace yourself, and plunge your hands into a tub that alternates between scalding and freezing, depending on how well-timed your turn is. First, the whites, sheets and shirts, scrubbed on wooden boards until your knuckles are as red as beets. There's a rhythm to it. Dunk, scrub, wring, sigh. Repeat, and repeat, and repeat, until you can recite your troubles to the tempo. Lye soap is the real star of the show. A block of yellowish determination that strips away grease, dignity, and sometimes the top layer of skin. The lather gets everywhere, under your nails, in your eyes, occasionally in your mouth, if you're unlucky or have a tendency to hum while working. You become intimately acquainted with stains, grass, wine, ink, and the mysterious blotches that no science can explain. Every successful scrub is a small victory. Every defeat is blamed on inferior materials or, if you're feeling bold, the laundry maid's lack of elbow grease. Rinsing comes next, an endless slosh of water in galvanized tubs, swirling with suds and the ghosts of 1,000 dirty handkerchiefs. You wring each item with aching wrists, arms trembling, knowing that the housekeeper will inspect the results with the intensity of a customs officer looking for contraband. Then comes the bluing, indigo powder, to make the whites whiter than white, though half the time it simply tints your hands a permanent shade of aristocratic blue. Finally, the drying. If the weather's fair, you carry heaving baskets outside to the lines in the walled garden, pegging each item with frozen fingers and praying the crows don't make off with the best napkins. If it's raining, which it always is, the drying racks are dragged near the kitchen range, filling the air with the scent of damp cotton and desperation. Irons, solid cast-iron monsters, are heated on the stove and wielded like medieval weaponry, flattening wrinkles and occasionally burning an accidental lace edge to a crisp. By afternoon, you're half drowned, half baked, and entirely exhausted. The laundry room is a sauna of steam, stray threads, and gossip. You swap stories, laugh at the day's disasters, and compare blisters like badges of honor. When all is done, each item is neatly folded, counted again, and returned to its rightful place, pristine until the next round of inevitable chaos. As you collapse onto your cot, you realize that laundry day is its own special kind of endurance test, one that leaves you wrung out, scrubbed clean, and quietly triumphant. After all, in the eternal struggle against dirt, you've lived to rinse another day. If a Victorian mansion is a kingdom, then its staircases are the treacherous mountain passes, the only way to traverse from the bustling world below stairs to the polished, perilous world above. Forget modern treadmills and gym memberships. If you're a maid in service, your daily workout consists of endless ascents and descents. Each staircase a new test of balance, speed, and sheer willpower. Welcome to the original Victorian fitness regime, sponsored by the House of Creaks, Slips, and unexpected obstacles. Staircases are everywhere. Grand, sweeping main stairs for the family, steep, narrow back stairs for the staff. Mysterious servants' passages that seem to lead to nowhere but always smell faintly of cabbage and coal. The moment you start your shift, you're in motion. Up, with hot water, down with coal scuttles, up with trays, down with empty plates, up to dust the portraits, down to fetch the laundry. You could chart your day by the number of steps climbed, if only you ever had time to stop and count. The main staircase is a work of art, wide, carpeted, and lined with ancestral portraits, all judging your posture and velocity. These are stairs for show. You ascend slowly, balancing trays with the grace of a circus performer, praying not to slip and scatter toast soldiers in front of the mistress. The banister gleams with polish and menace. You never quite trust it, remembering the time it gave way under the last housemaid, sending her tumbling in a flurry of linen and scandalized gasps. The rule: walk, don't run, and never, ever let the housekeeper catch you scuffing the carpet. But the real horror is the back stairs, steep, narrow, and winding, designed with the apparent intention of thinning the staff population through attrition. Carrying a bucket or a stack of sheets, you squeeze against the wall to let the cook past, each of you clutching your burdens and offering silent prayers to the patron saint of unbroken ankles. There's a patch of loose tile halfway up, a dip in the wood where the boards groan in warning, and a special step that wobbles just enough to make you question your choices in life. Your shoes, practical as they are, offer about as much traction as buttered eels. Each trip is a test of memory. Who asked for coal in the nursery? Did you already deliver the hot water to the blue bedroom? Or was that yesterday? You develop a mental map, tracking requests and routes, all while maneuvering around unexpected roadblocks, a runaway cat, a misplaced footman, or, worst of all, the master's hat left in your path like a Victorian booby trap. Staircases aren't just dangerous, they're relentless. They wait for you at every turn, demanding tribute in the form of sore calves and perpetually aching knees. By noon, your legs burn with the sort of fire usually reserved for blacksmiths or condemned heretics. By nightfall, you've climbed enough vertical feet to rival a Swiss goat and descended with the grace, or lack thereof, of a sack of flour. Yet, there's a secret source of pride here. Other maids may boast of kitchen skills or linen-folding prowess, but you know you're made of tougher stuff. Literally, your thighs are steeled, your balance unshakable, your ability to sprint up 3 flights without a spill bordering on Olympic. You measure your days not in hours but in flights conquered. Of course, the real trick is surviving the inevitable mishaps. Everyone falls eventually. The question isn't if, but when, and whether the tray, the tea set, or your pride suffers the most. You learn to laugh it off, swap stories with the others, and carry on. After all, tomorrow brings another mountain of stairs and another chance to test your mettle, so you climb and climb and climb. Because in a house ruled by gravity, only the fittest, or at least the most stubborn, prevail. Your battle scars are blisters, your trophies are not falling today, and your gym is a labyrinth of mahogany and marble. Welcome to the staircases of service. Mortal enemy, fitness plan, and never-ending adventure. The clock strikes 2, and the great Victorian mansion falls into a deceptive hush. The midday madness of breakfast, bells, and blunders has passed, and the family, sated and a little sleepy from lunch, retreats into their private corners. The master disappears to his study on important business, which you suspect involves reading the paper with his eyes closed. And the mistress arranges herself on the paper chaise lounge in the drawing room, fanning herself and contemplating embroidery with heroic levels of inaction. You, meanwhile, are still very much awake and expected to stay that way. The afternoon lull is a lie. It's a trap, a test of vigilance for those below stairs, designed to weed out the weak, the yawners, and anyone tempted to lean against a banister for a moment's rest. In a world where napping is a luxury reserved for those who sign your pay envelope, the merest hint of drowsiness is a crime, punishable by extra chores and the eternal scorn of the housekeeper. The temptation, though, is real. You've been on your feet since before dawn, climbing stairs, scrubbing, polishing, and negotiating with chamber pots. The kitchen is heavy with the scent of roast and potatoes, and the heat from the range wraps you in a cozy, soporific fog. The long corridor, usually a bustling highway of footmen and maids, now echoes with nothing but the gentle ticking of clocks and the occasional snore, definitely not from you, of course, but from someone braver or luckier who found a hiding spot. Yet there is no true escape. Every staff member learns to move in slow motion during the lull, drifting from room to room with a rag in hand, wiping already spotless surfaces. There is always a chair to straighten, a vase to recenter, or a family portrait to dust for the third time that week. The housekeeper patrols like a hawk, eyes sharp for slackers, issuing tasks with the uncanny knack of someone who can sense when a maid's eyelids droop. Even in total silence, you become an expert at busy idleness, making yourself look industrious while sneaking moments of respite. Maybe you pause by the open window under the guise of straightening the drapes, letting the breeze cool your face and carry your thoughts away for half a minute. Perhaps you linger in the linen cupboard, folding and refolding napkins, letting the musty calm lull you into a micro-rest. Just don't get caught actually sitting. To sit is to surrender, to admit defeat to gravity and exhaustion, and to earn a scolding worthy of a Greek tragedy. Meanwhile, the family's afternoon routine continues above. The children are sent out with their governess for constitutionals or left to terrorize the nursery. The mistress's friends arrive, gliding in for tea and gossip, never suspecting that the calm on display is maintained by an army of servants fighting off sleep with sheer force of will. Every silver tray you deliver is carried as if it weighed a feather. Every curtain you adjust an act of supreme focus, even if your mind drifts toward dreams of your own pillow. As the afternoon wears on, you feel the shadows grow longer and the urge to nap more powerful. Some veteran maids claim to have mastered the stand-up nap, a half-conscious trance achieved while polishing the banister or arranging flowers. It's a legendary skill, whispered about with awe in the servants' hall, though few admit to it openly. Eventually, the quiet ends. The first dinner bell rings, the kitchen erupts in renewed chaos, and you snap back to full alert. The lull is over. You survived. No naps, no disasters, just another invisible triumph in the long, sleepless saga of Victorian service. And so, as you shake off your weariness and dive back into duty, you remember, in this house, to nap is to sin, but to endure without sleep is a superpower all its own. Somewhere in the depths of the house, a bell rings. Soft, insistent, unmistakable. To the uninitiated, it's just a faint tinkle. To a Victorian maid, it's the soundtrack of existence. The call to action that never lets you forget you're living at someone else's convenience. There is no escaping the bells. They lurk in the walls, hidden wires snaking behind faded wallpaper. Each bell on the panel in the servants' hall connected to a room above. Each with its own label: drawing room, master's study, blue bedroom, scullery, library, guest, suite. You never quite get used to them. The first time you hear a bell, you freeze. Was that your bell? Was it meant for you? Is it urgent, or just the mistress demanding an extra shawl because the window was open for 5 seconds? Only the butler, with his supernatural sense of domestic order, can decipher the true meaning of each chime, short and sharp for the master's impatience, a gentle ring for the nervous guest, 3 quick dings for the housekeeper's particular brand of chaos. As a new maid, you study the bell panel the way a scholar studies ancient runes. You learn the pitch of each bell, the drawing room's delicate ping, the nursery's nervous jangle, the ominous clang of the front door that signals a visitor, possibly a vicar, possibly an inspector, possibly doom. You even begin to dream in bells, the notes ringing through your sleep, blurring the line between rest and relentless servitude. Responding is an art form, blending stealth, speed, and the ability to appear calm even as your heart races. As soon as a bell rings, you spring into action with all the grace of a Victorian ninja. Your goal is to reach the room before the family member rings a second time, a signal that you are, in their eyes, already late. Up the stairs, down the corridors, dodging footmen and dogs and the occasional wayward toddler, you hurry, smoothing your hair, straightening your apron, practicing your polite expression as you run. Of course, not every bell is created equal. There are false alarms, bells that rattle when the wind blows, or get stuck and summon you to a room when no one remembers ringing. There are decoy bells, rung by mischievous children testing your reflexes and patience. And there are the dreaded simultaneous bells, when the drawing room and the library both ring at once and you're forced to decide, tea for the mistress or books for the master. The butler gives you a look, as if to say, you should know the answer. You don't. You just run faster. Sometimes, you arrive at your destination to find the room empty, the occupant vanished, the task a mystery. Do you wait? Do you tidy something just in case? The fear of being caught idling is ever present, so you busy yourself with dusting a table or rearranging a cushion, all while listening for another bell to summon you away. The bells are, above all, a test of your ability to exist in 2 places at once. You must anticipate needs, read minds, and always keep one ear tuned for the next chime. Some seasoned maids claim they can tell which bell will ring next, sensing it in their bones. Others say the house itself has a rhythm, and you simply have to surrender to it. By evening, after a dozen sprints and 100 polite answers, your nerves are taut and your shoes are worn. The bells fall silent at last, until a midnight summons, of course. You collapse in the servants' hall, trading stories of missed calls and miraculous saves, bonded in the knowledge that, for all your skills, the bells will always have the upper hand. And so, you drift to sleep, one ear still open, ready to leap up at the next sound. In the world of Victorian service, you don't just answer bells, you become one with them, responding like a ninja, moving with silent urgency, forever at the mercy of the next mysterious ring. There are days when the house grows too small, too full of bells, and you're grateful to be sent outside, to the garden, the Victorian Maids' version of a change of scenery. At first, garden duty sounds almost idyllic. Roses, fresh air, birdsong. What could be better than trading silver polish for sunlight? But reality sets in fast. Victorian gardens aren't just for show. They're battlegrounds of mud, weeds, and horticultural ambitions gone slightly mad. The moment you step into the walled garden, the air changes. You trade the scent of soap and cabbage for damp earth, cut grass, and the occasional whiff of manure. So strong, you begin to suspect it's not entirely accidental. The head gardener, Mr. Poole, is waiting. Battered hat, muddy boots, and an expression that suggests he trusts neither the weather nor the house's new-fangled rhododendrons. He rules the garden with a trowel and a suspicious attitude toward anyone who can't tell a daisy from a dandelion. Your first job, deadheading roses. It sounds gentle, but you soon learn deadheading is just a polite word for sacrificing your forearms to the rose gods. Each thorn is a lesson in humility. Mr. Prossin, Poole grumbles behind you, muttering advice in riddles. Never trust a rosebush on a Thursday, or mind the peonies, they gossip. You nod solemnly, not entirely sure if you're being taught or hazed. Weeding is next. There's something deeply existential about crouching in the mud, yanking at dandelions that reappear with the persistence of unpaid bills. The other maids claim it builds character. You suspect it mostly builds blisters. Sometimes you're tasked with picking gooseberries or blackcurrants, squinting in the sun, filling your basket only to be accused of eating half the crop. And yes, you probably did sneak a berry or two. Of course, the garden has its hazards. There's the family goose, a creature of pure malice, who guards the vegetable patch as if it contains the crown jewels. Children sent out for fresh air often become wild, shrieking creatures, weaving in and out of flower beds while you attempt to rake leaves and pretend you don't hear their whispered plans to accidentally soak you with the garden hose. You occasionally get to plant bulbs or scatter seeds, always under the suspicious gaze of Mr. Poole, who insists every Victorian maid should know the Latin name for nasturtiums and the difference between a weed and an herb. In practice, if the cook uses it, it's an herb. If not, it's your fault for missing it. Rain or shine, you keep working, tucking in seedlings, scrubbing dirt from under your nails, and wondering if all this toil will ever be noticed from the drawing room windows. But there are quiet joys. The sun warms your back. The air, while heavy with pollen and the occasional sneeze, is free of the endless clamour of bells. Sometimes, at the end of the day, you find a perfect bloom, a secret little victory, proof that life thrives in even the most managed, trampled corners. Maybe you take a minute to enjoy it before heading back inside, boots muddy, hands stained, soul just a little bit lighter. Garden duty isn't glamorous, and you'll probably never win Mr. Poole's approval or learn the true meaning of his riddles. But for a few muddy, thorny hours, you've escaped the mansion's walls. And that, as every Victorian maid knows, is a luxury worth every blister. If there is one task that tests a Victorian maid's patience, stamina, and pain threshold all at once, it's ironing. The Great Ironing Marathon isn't just a household chore. It's a weekly trial by fire, literally and figuratively. The family expects crisp sheets, immaculate collars, and napkins sharp enough to give paper cuts. Achieving this requires a combination of brute strength, impeccable timing, and a spiritual commitment to not faint from the heat. The ordeal starts early, with heavy irons, solid slabs of cast iron that have to be heated on the kitchen range until they're hot enough to fry an egg, and sometimes, for the unlucky or distracted, they do. You learn quickly to test an iron with a splash of water. If it sizzles, it's ready. If it doesn't, you're about to waste 15 minutes moving a cold block across damp linen and pretending it's working. Each iron has a wooden handle, but the heat always finds a way through. There are no oven mitts, only layers of apron and a quietly desperate prayer. The real veterans wrap their fingers in rags or steal a moment to flex and shake out the inevitable cramps. There's a rhythm. Heat the iron the fabric, swap for a new hot iron, return the cooling, one to the stove, and repeat. If you're lucky, the rotation is smooth. If not, you're left flapping a napkin in the air, willing the iron to reheat faster. You start with the easy things: flat sheets, pillowcases, plain tablecloths. The fabric steams beneath your hand, hissing as you press, lifting the scent of soap and a hint of singed cotton. Next come shirts with their fussy collars and cuffs. Each one demands precision, the kind of attention you'd expect from a watchmaker. A wrinkle in the wrong place could draw a comment from the mistress, or, worse, a lecture on standards from the housekeeper. But the true test is lace. Victorian lacework is a thing of beauty, until it's your job to iron it. One wrong move, and it shrivels like lettuce on a summer's day. You coax, you pat, you whisper apologies, all while sweating buckets and hoping nobody notices your efforts until something inevitably goes wrong. The kitchen fills with steam, the air thick and sticky, turning the room into a kind of subtropical laundromat. The windows fog, the floor grows slick, and every surface radiates the kind of heat that makes you question the wisdom of starched petticoats. Conversation, if it happens, is in murmurs and groans. Careful, that's the cook's apron. Or, is that the good napkin or the backup? At some point, you lose all sense of time. Hours pass in a blur of pressing, folding, and shifting irons. Your arms ache, your back stiffens, and your fingertips tingle with the memory of 100 close calls. Yet, amidst the sweat and steam, there's a peculiar pride in each perfectly pressed shirt, each gleaming tablecloth stacked for the next inevitable dinner. When the final iron is laid to rest and the last napkin folded, you pause for a moment, savoring the sight of a linen cupboard neatly arranged, a brief but glorious victory. Of course, tomorrow someone will spill gravy or drop jam on a shirt, and the whole marathon will begin again. But for now, you cool your fingers, wipe the sweat from your brow, and limp away with the satisfaction of a race run. Another day survived, another ironed mountain conquered, another unsung achievement below stairs. When the sun dips below the hedges and the great house settles into evening, a hush descends. But for the maids and footmen on night duty, the work is far from over. The night shift in a Victorian mansion is a peculiar twilight world, part practical, part spectral. As the gas lights flicker and the pipes groan, you discover that not all the house's secrets are kept under lock and key. The first task is always the lamps. Shadows creep along the corridors, so you move from room to room with a box of matches and a practiced hand, trimming wicks, topping up oil, and hoping not to set the drapes ablaze. The night air is chillier, the floors colder. You hear every creak, every distant footstep. The mansion feels less like a home and more like a giant, groaning ship at sea, except the only thing in danger of sinking is your own eyelids. After the lamps come, the fires. Every hearth must be banked for the night, embers arranged to last until morning. The cook insists on her own special method for the kitchen range. While the master's study demands absolute silence, you wouldn't want to interrupt his important reading, which is definitely not just a nap in an armchair. Occasionally, you catch a glimpse of the housekeeper, gliding like an avenging spectre, checking that not a single candle is left to burn unattended. Once the fires are safe, there are late-night trays to deliver. A glass of port for the master, warm milk for the children, or tea for the mistress, who claims it helps her sleep. It doesn't. These missions are fraught with peril. Every floorboard threatens to betray you. Every closed door could conceal a wide-awake guest. The art is in moving soundlessly, bare feet or stockinged, breath held, tray perfectly balanced, all while dodging pets asleep in awkward places. Night brings out the mansion's other inhabitants too. Cats prowl, mice scuttle, and sometimes, just sometimes, you're certain you hear footsteps when no one should be. Rumors swirl among the staff. The haunted third-floor corridor. The painting that blinks. The midnight moaning of pipes that may, or may not, be pipes. You pretend not to believe. But on a lonely round, every shadow lengthens and every unexplained noise prickles your skin. There are also the unexpected tasks. A crying child, a drafty window, the master's urgent request for a missing book at midnight. Sometimes a guest decides they'd like a hot bath, or, heaven help you, a midnight snack. There's an art to responding, calm, apologetic, never letting slip that you were dozing in the linen cupboard 5 minutes earlier. Yet for all the stress, there's a strange magic to the night shift. The house is yours in a way it never is by day. The clamour of bells and voices has faded. You move through the stillness, almost invisible, part of a secret, silent ballet. Sometimes you pause by a window, watching the moon spill silver across the lawn and savour a minute of peace, broken only by the gentle tick of the hall clock. Eventually, as the clock inches toward dawn, your work is nearly done. You bank the last fire, turn down the last lamp, and steal a quiet moment to rest before the day starts all over again. The secrets of the night shift are many, most unspoken, all unforgettable. And as the house yawns and begins to stir, you disappear into the shadows, leaving the world above stairs to wonder how the night ever passed so smoothly at all. As twilight settles and the family gathers, the entire house holds its breath. It's time for dinner, the most theatrical performance of the Victorian day. The kitchen erupts into organized mayhem, pots bubbling, saucepans clattering, and the cook issuing orders with military precision. Upstairs, the dining room glows with candlelight, polished, silver, and the kind of floral arrangements that suggest an unspoken rivalry with Kew Gardens. You, as one of the maids, are about to step into the most stressful hour of your working week. Dinner service. It starts long before the first course. Hours earlier, you've been polishing forks, folding napkins, and double-checking that the fish knives are in their proper places, and that no one, please, has set out a dessert spoon for the soup. The footman inspects the crystal, the butler paces like a general before battle, and you quietly hope you'll make it through the meal without dropping anything, tripping over the rug, or, worst of all, spilling gravy on someone's lap. As the guests file in, you stand by the sideboard, all nerves and forced serenity, watching for cues. Service is a ballet of movement and timing. Soup delivered hot and simultaneously, bread replenished as soon as it vanishes, and wine poured in a stream so delicate it barely ripples in the glass. No conversation for you, only nods, whispers, and a series of meaningful glances as the staff wordlessly navigates the minefield of requests and disasters. First course, soup. Every bowl is carried on a tray, hands steady, steps measured. If you've ever balanced 8 bowls of oxtail broth while dodging a dog under the table and the housekeeper's gaze, you understand why soup face is a real thing. Concentrated, determined, just a little terrified. The guests murmur polite approval. The footman glides behind, replenishing bread and giving you an encouraging, or was it warning, 2-eyebrow. Second course, the main event. The kitchen sends up steaming roasts, perfectly browned birds, and vegetables in symmetrical piles. Each plate must be served with equal parts, elegance and invisibility. The mistress signals for more peas, the master demands a second helping of lamb, and a guest requests something that was never on the menu. The orchestra of dinner service swells, every servant in motion, the clatter of silverware drowned by polite laughter, and a mounting sense of doom that you're one wrong tray from calamity. Third course. Dessert. When the sugar is high, and everyone's expectations even higher, delicate puddings, tarts, and a towering jelly that wobbles with every step. The butler insists on serving it himself, but you're tasked with the aftershock, collecting empty plates, brushing crumbs, and quietly rescuing a collapsed raspberry fool before anyone above stairs notices. Throughout, the art is in appearing calm and unfazed, even as you're frantically calculating how to get the burnt potatoes off the table and the wine stain out of the napkin before the next course begins. Behind the swing door, you share breathless updates with the other staff. A dropped fork, a close call with a sauce boat, a heroic save by the kitchen maid. Finally, as coffee is served and the guests drift to the drawing room, you exhale. Your feet ache, your nerves are frayed, and you're already dreading the avalanche of dishes awaiting below stairs. But for a brief moment, you can stand tall, knowing you've survived another dinner service, an orchestration of chaos and grace, unseen but indispensable, the quiet heart of the Victorian evening. There's a particular chill that creeps through the mansion when word arrives. The relatives are coming. No matter how vast the house or how long the guest list, one truth remains. Visiting family turns every routine upside down, multiplies every chore, and delivers a fresh serving of chaos. The staff exchange glances in the hall, silently bracing for the storm. The butler polishes his shoes twice. The housekeeper dusts with newfound vengeance. And you, the maid, start praying for a plague of locusts to intervene. The first sign of impending disaster is the laundry pile, which swells overnight to the size of a minor mountain. Suddenly, every sheet, towel, and napkin must be washed, ironed, and folded with surgical precision. Spare rooms are stripped, beds remade, and mysterious stains, some as old as the Crimean War, are discovered on the best coverlets. If a single pillowcase is out of place, rest assured it will be noticed by Aunt Eugenia, who considers herself the last word on household management, despite not lifting a finger since 1842. As the carriages roll in, the drama begins. Relatives arrive in droves, each one with a trunk, a dog, and very specific dietary requirements. The children, strange, unsupervised creatures, scatter through the house like marbles, overturning vases, trailing jam, and somehow managing to lock themselves in the pantry at least twice a day. You find yourself summoned to locate lost hats, lost gloves, and, occasionally, lost relatives. Meals become theatrical productions. The kitchen staff groan under the weight of extra courses and just a few little preferences. Uncle Percy doesn't eat onions. Cousin Mildred must have her eggs precisely coddled. And nobody, under any circumstances, can be served rabbit since the incident of '67. The dining room expands to fit extra chairs, each one requiring polishing, rearranging, and a prayer that no one will notice the odd wobble in the third seat from the left. The bells ring more frequently, and with new, impossible to decipher codes. One guest requests hot water 3 times an hour. Another sends back their tea, because it tastes of Wednesday. The mistress floats through it all with the smile of a seasoned general, dispatching orders and gracious apologies while you dart from floor to floor, your to-do list multiplying with every passing minute. Downstairs, the servants' hall becomes the unofficial war room. There is gossip, who's flirting with whom, who's likely to start a row before dessert, and which relative will feign illness to avoid the croquet match. Temporary alliances are forged over cups of strong tea, and the shared trauma of Aunt Eugenia's monologues. The cook, usually unflappable, is found muttering about resigning to join a monastery at least twice a day. Bedtime is a farce. Sheets must be turned down, hot water bottles delivered, and every guest tucked in as if they're royalty. Inevitably, someone requests extra pillows or remembers a favorite book left in the library. After you've finally sat down, lights are extinguished, only for bells to ring out again, summoning you to yet another emergency, usually involving a missing shawl or a draught from the east window. By the time the last carriage departs, the staff are walking ghosts, held together by tea, camaraderie, and the relief of impending silence. You survey the aftermath, crumbs, smudges, faint echoes of argument, and realize you've survived another round. When the relatives arrive, it's double the work, triple the drama, and the sort of adventure that reminds you, quiet days are life's greatest luxury. There is a special electricity in the air on payday, though it's not quite the kind you'd hope for. Once a month, the household enters a peculiar state of anticipation. The footman polishes his shoes with more enthusiasm. The kitchen maids start whispering about sausage rolls, And you, though you know better by now, can't help but feel a flutter of hope in your starched chest. The day begins as every other. Bells, chores, and a master's list that grows longer the closer it gets to pay time. You go about your duties with a new spring in your step, calculating what this month's wages might buy. A pair of new stockings? A comb to replace the one with 3 teeth? A pie from the market, still warm if you run fast enough? Of course, this is all fantasy. You know the number by heart. And it's a modest sum. Generous, they say, for someone given room and board. Never mind that the board is mostly leftover bread crusts and the room is a slanted attic barely big enough for your dreams. At some point after lunch, the housekeeper calls you into her office, a formidable lair with tidy ledgers, a ticking clock, and the ever-present smell of lavender water. You stand, back straight, hands folded, as she reads your name in a tone suggesting she discovered you hiding under a teacup. She counts out the coins into your palm, always twice, trust but verify, and slides them across the desk with the faintest of smiles. You thank her, curtsy, and back away, clutching your riches like a dragon with a hoarding problem. For a brief moment you are flush with cash, relatively speaking. Down in the servants' hall, a buzz of excitement takes hold. Everyone's pocket jingles, and talk turns to plans. The boot boy dreams of a half day at the cricket pitch. The scullery maid eyes a length of ribbon she saw in town, and the cook, flush from overtime, contemplates buying real beef for Sunday's stew. Someone suggests a trip to the music hall, and for a few shining minutes, the future glimmers with possibility. But reality sets in quickly. Wages are stretched thin, first for essentials, then for family sent home, and always with a bit set aside for emergencies. Boots have holes, petticoats wear thin, and the doctor must be paid should illness strike. The little luxuries, an orange, a bit of lace, a second-hand novel, are considered, weighed, and more often than not, put back on the shelf. Money vanishes as swiftly as it arrives. Some weeks, the staff joke about their experience as the real treasure. How many napkins folded, floors scrubbed, and fires stoked. How quickly you can set a table or dodge the housekeeper's wrath. You become rich in the skills that no one above stairs will ever truly notice. The art of smoothing linens, the speed of a well-executed hallway sprint, the zen patience of surviving chamber pot duty. You are paid, most of all, in endurance. At the end of the day, you tuck your wages deep in your pocket or in the tea tin beneath your cot, listening to the muted clink of coins earned with hard work, humble pride. You close your eyes, already planning how to stretch every penny to next month's pay. Rich in experience, poor in everything else, but for tonight, the dream of new stockings and a warm slice of pie is yours. And that, for a Victorian maid, is almost as sweet as a raise. Almost. Once the last bell has faded and the mansion's chaos gives way to late-night hush, there's a rare, precious hour for yourself, just enough to put pen to paper. In the world of the Victorian maid, letters home are lifelines. Threads spun from longing, loyalty, and the quiet hope that your family still remembers your face. Of course, every letter is as much performance as confession, crafted in a careful code that tells the truth, while never letting on how hard things really are. You begin by describing the house. Very grand, with fine carpets and a lovely garden. You write, omitting that you only ever walk the carpets in sensible shoes, and the garden is mostly experienced at a crouch, yanking weeds. The family is kind, you continue. Code for the mistress hasn't shouted at me this week, and no one has accused me of stealing the plum cake. You comment on the children, lively, which, in reality, means have the energy of caffeinated ferrets, and are forever sticky and partial to hiding in the laundry baskets. Writing home is an exercise in restraint. You want to say how tired you are, how your back aches, how you dream of a whole night's sleep without a bell clanging in your ear. But you don't. Instead, you mention the work keeps me busy, which might mean a 16-hour day of sprinting upstairs and negotiating with chamber pots. You compliment the cook's stews, edible if you drown them in bread. Mention the cat, aloof, and always ask after your siblings. Is Elsie still courting the grocer's boy? You inquire, knowing full well your mother will interpret this as, I'm well, I miss you, and I haven't completely lost hope. There are unwritten rules for these letters. Never sound desperate, never admit to a mistake. Unless it's humorous, then it becomes a lesson, and always include some small triumph. I polished the silver and was told it shone, or the housekeeper complimented my apron. Even if the compliment was faint praise wrapped in a warning, you turn it into a badge of honor for the folks back home. The real art is in the polite complaint, a delicate dance of honesty and optimism. The weather has been damp, and the laundry slow to dry, you write. Instead of I've wrung out 3 miles of linens and caught a cold, the children keep me busy, never, I am one shriek away from fleeing to Canada. A Victorian letter home is a masterclass in understatement, the literary equivalent of smiling while your shoes fill with rainwater. You tuck in a question about your mother's rheumatism, your father's garden, or the state of the old clock on the mantel. The hope is that every answer brings a touch of home back to you. A recipe, a bit of gossip, or the news that someone's having twins. Again, you carefully fold your words, seal the envelope, and sometimes include a shilling if the month's pay allows. It's both a comfort and a duty. Proof you haven't forgotten where you came from, even as you scrub someone else's front steps. Letters home are your invisible lifeline, stretching across counties and class divides, keeping you tethered to a world where you are known by your first name and not just girl. As you blow out the candle, you hope your letter brings smiles, even laughter, and that the love threaded between each line is enough to carry you and your family through another month apart. Polite, cheerful, and quietly honest, your letter is a little act of resistance, and sometimes the only real luxury you own. When the lamps are extinguished and the mansion falls into its deepest silence, there is a brief, precious moment in the life of a Victorian maid that belongs only to her, the hour between duties and dreams. Your day has been rung out by a chorus of bells and commands, but at last you are alone in your attic bed, tucked under blankets that never quite reach your toes. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the moon or, more often, by the anxious whispers of the mice in the walls. Sleep is not a guarantee. Sometimes it arrives with blessed speed, your body surrendering to exhaustion before your head fully finds the pillow. More often, your mind races, reviewing mistakes, replaying near misses, the tea spilled, the bell missed, the dinner napkin folded the wrong way, and wondering if anyone will notice tomorrow's tiny, strategic shortcut with the dusting. Then, the dreams begin. Sometimes you dream of home, bustling kitchens, laughter by the fireside, the smell of bread baking, or soap drying on the line. You dream of family, of siblings who remember your name, of mothers who never need a second letter to feel your love. On rare, lucky nights, you dream of impossible things. A room of your own, a soft feather bed, a week with nothing to do but rest. There are dreams of better postings, a place where the work is lighter, the family is kinder, and the uniform actually fits. In these dreams, the house is always warm, the bells are fewer, and the housekeeper greets you with a genuine smile. You hold these dreams close, letting them carry you beyond the relentless routine. But sleep brings nightmares too. the footsteps that echo down empty corridors, the sharp voice of the mistress summoning you in the dead of night for an impossible task, the terror of losing your job over a chipped teacup or a single smudge on the silver. Sometimes you wake in a sweat, convinced you've overslept or missed the breakfast bell. You lie still, heart pounding, staring at the shadows, reminding yourself that there is still time before dawn, still a little space to call your own. It's during these sleepless hours that you take stock of your life, your hopes, and your fears. Every maid knows someone who moved on to a better place, a country house with fewer stairs, a city townhouse with afternoons off, a kindly mistress who actually remembers your birthday. Their stories circulate below stairs like ghost tales, passed from bunk to bunk, fueling the eternal hope that your turn will come. Sometimes, you even dare to imagine something beyond service. A shop of your own, a small house with a garden, or, most outrageous of all, a family you raise on your own terms. But hope is a risky business, especially for those who live at the mercy of someone else's schedule and mood. You tuck your ambitions away, safe in the knowledge that dreams, both waking and sleeping, are free. They cost nothing, take up no room in the trunk beneath your bed, and are not subject to the housekeeper's inspection. As you drift off at last, you find a strange comfort in the rhythm of your routine, the creak of the roof beams, the promise of another sunrise. The work will always be hard, the pay will never be enough, but as long as you can dream, you can endure. Tomorrow brings another day of service, another round of bells and blisters, but tonight, at least, you are rich in hope. In the world of the Victorian maid, it is hope that keeps the wheels turning, the candles burning, and the heart quietly, stubbornly alive. Every grand Victorian mansion holds its secrets. But below stairs, there is an even older tradition, the code of silence. You may spend your days in close proximity to drama, but your tongue must be as tightly tied as your apron strings. The ability to keep a secret is the first loyalty oath of service. Break it, and you're likely to find your references vanish as quickly as last Sunday's trifle. Gossip, of course, is the lifeblood of the servants' hall. It swirls through the air along with steam from the scullery, passed in whispers and glances while polishing silver or waiting for the cook's approval on a pie. The cook claims she doesn't listen, but somehow knows who's courting whom, who's in line for a raise, and who nearly set fire to the pantry. Again, you quickly learn the art of speaking in riddles, disguising juicy details in harmless anecdotes and clever asides. If a maid returns late from the village, or a footman is spotted with a new ribbon, the news spreads faster than the flu. Yet for all the chatter, there's an iron rule. Secrets about the family stay in the family. You see more in a week than most outsiders see in a lifetime. Midnight arguments behind closed doors, suspiciously tearful guests, the master slipping out after dark. Every servant could write a novel, but instead you write nothing. Not a word, not a whisper, not even in your letters home. If you must refer to a family crisis, you use the code. The mistress is not herself this week, or the master has taken to his study, and leave the rest unsaid. Sometimes the lines blur. There are staff scandals too. Crushes gone sour, pilfered biscuits, the infamous incident of the drunken footman that no one discusses in daylight. These tales are shared in the safety of the attic. After lights out, when the day's stress melts into laughter and mock solemnity, you make loyalty pacts, pinky promises, and cross your heart oaths, all sealed with a biscuit, and the understanding that what happens below stairs stays below stairs. The greatest test of the code comes with the unexpected. The moment when someone from above stairs asks a direct question. Perhaps a guest wonders aloud why the mistress seems pale, or a relative inquires after the master's business. You answer with polite vagueness, "I'm afraid I wouldn't know, sir," and pray your face betrays nothing. The ability to keep a straight face is essential. The ability to evade is an art. Practice makes perfect, and after enough near misses, your poker face could win medals. Even among friends, there are boundaries. Some stories are simply too dangerous to share. The housekeeper may confide a private worry, or the butler may mention a family secret after a glass too many, but you keep these tucked safely away. In a world where jobs depend on discretion, a loose tongue is a luxury no one can afford. References are gold, and one slip can see you cast out. Your prospects dashed on the rocks of indiscretion. At the end of the day, you come to respect the quiet solidarity that the code of silence creates. It is a strange comfort, this unspoken bond, forged through shared trials and the knowledge that everyone is guarding someone else's secret as carefully as their own. In the Victorian mansion, the real currency isn't just gossip, but trust. And you learn quickly that sometimes silence is the only thing standing between you and the street. And so you hold your tongue, laugh in whispers, and carry the house's secrets like invisible jewels. It's not always easy, but it's what keeps the whole complicated household running. One carefully guarded secret at a time. The first sign is the clatter of carriage wheels on gravel, followed by the unmistakable sound of polite voices in the hall. Word ripples below stairs. The vicar's here. The atmosphere shifts instantly. Every servant knows what's expected when the man of the cloth arrives. Back straight, eyes lowered, hands folded, and an air of piety so convincing you could be canonized on the spot. In Victorian England, the vicar's visit is more than a religious event. It's an inspection, a moral inventory, and sometimes a test of acting skills. The housekeeper becomes suddenly devout. The cook wipes flour from her face and murmurs about providence, and you, the maid, find yourself straightening hymn books and wondering if your shoes are presentable enough for salvation. There's always a mad scramble to locate the good teapot and the best set of cups, the ones not chipped, not stained, and certainly not last used for the mistress's medicinal sherry. Once the vicar is safely ensconced in the drawing room, a hush falls over the house. The mistress ushers him to the prime seat near the fire, serving tea with an extra spoonful of reverence. You are summoned to bring biscuits, ideally homemade, though in a pinch, anything round and vaguely edible will do. Your role is to appear helpful, silent, and just devout enough to pass muster, but not so pious as to seem suspicious. There's a choreography to these visits. The vicar makes conversation, probing gently into the household's moral health. Has everyone been attending church? Are the children reading their scripture? Is the cook still partial to Sunday roast rather than the public house? You stand by, quietly praying that the children haven't been overheard plotting insurrection in the nursery, or that no one mentions the incident with the Christmas pudding and the brandy. When prayers are called for, you fold your hands and bow your head. If there's hymn singing, you join in, mouthing the words and hoping the vicar doesn't notice that you're half a verse behind. There's always one staff member with a voice like a rusty hinge. Today it's the footman, valiantly attempting all things bright and beautiful in a key previously unknown to science. You suppress a smile, biting your tongue and focusing on looking suitably moved. The vicar, meanwhile, dispenses advice and gentle rebukes. Charity begins at home, he says, glancing meaningfully at the mistress, who responds with a pained smile and a promise to remind the children to donate their old toys. He blesses the bread, asks after any ailments, and drops hints about the upcoming church fete, where staff attendance is expected but enthusiasm is strictly optional. Sometimes, if the vicar is in a storytelling mood, you are treated to a sermon about the dangers of idleness or the virtue of humility. You nod at the appropriate moments, practicing your most angelic expression. It's a peculiar sort of theatre, one in which everyone knows their lines, even if they sometimes forget their cues. Once the visit is over and the vicar's carriage rolls away, there's a collective exhale. The house resumes its usual tempo. The good cups are packed away, the biscuits disappear, and the cook mutters about saints and sinners, all the same in the end. You unpin your starched collar and thank Providence that you survived another ecclesiastical inspection with your reputation mostly intact. For a Victorian maid, when the vicar calls, the real miracle is remembering all the words to the hymn, pouring tea without trembling, and looking devout without falling asleep, all in a day's work on the moral front lines. For the Victorian maid, the changing of the seasons is less a gentle turning of the earth and more a series of escalating domestic crises. Spring is not simply buds and birdsong. Christmas is not just holly and hymns. Each season brings its own trial, transforming the mansion into a gauntlet of new demands, epic chores, and the sort of annual horrors that could put anyone off calendars forever. Spring, of course, means spring cleaning, a phrase that sends a shudder through every servant's bones. It is the Great Purge, a time when the housekeeper produces lists longer than the Magna Carta. Nothing is spared. Rugs are beaten, curtains are taken down and washed, and windows are polished until you can spot a fingerprint from 3 rooms away. Mattresses are dragged outside and thumped as if to exorcise winter's ghosts. You scale ladders to dust chandeliers, your reward a face full of soot and cobwebs. The whole house becomes an obstacle course of drying linens, misplaced furniture, and buckets that spill exactly where you step. Fresh air is less about health than about airing out grievances, mostly your own. Just as you recover, summer brings its own set of torments. The family decides to host garden parties, which means endless rounds of washing tea sets, polishing garden chairs, and running back and forth with trays of lemonade and cake. Someone always gets sunburnt, the dog escapes, and a wasp finds its way into the trifle. Then there's the annual picnic, which sounds jolly until you realize it involves carrying half the kitchen's worth of crockery into a damp field, so the family can sit on itchy blankets and complain about ants. Autumn is the season of preserving and preparing. The kitchen turns into a boiling cauldron of chutneys, jams, and pickles. Apples must be cored, pears peeled, and plums pitted until your hands ache. The cook turns into a tyrant, timing every batch with military precision and threatening exile to the scullery if a single jar is dropped. If you're not peeling, you're sweeping up leaves in the garden or scrubbing boots caked with October mud. Then comes Christmas, beautiful in theory, Herculean in practice. Preparations begin weeks in advance. Mincemeat is mixed, puddings are steamed, and the house is swaddled in evergreen until it looks more forest than mansion. Every surface bristles with holly and ivy. Every room echoes with the sound of carols and complaints. The family hosts parties, each more elaborate than the last, and you find yourself rehearsing the 12 days of Christmas, in between polishing silver and shooing the dog away from the goose. On Christmas Day, you're up before dawn peeling potatoes in the cold kitchen, and lucky if you catch a whiff of turkey by the time the family sits down to dinner. But the worst horror of all may be Twelfth Night, when every bauble, branch, and candle must come down and the house return to its original, unnaturally spotless state. You spend days vacuuming up pine needles, sorting broken ornaments, and trying to remember where everything actually belongs. Through it all, you persevere, finding tiny joys, stolen mince pies, a laugh with the kitchen maid, a crisp winter sunrise as you haul decorations back to the attic. Because if there's one thing seasonal torment teaches you, it's that nothing lasts forever, not even spring cleaning. And when it's all finally over, you congratulate yourself. Another cycle survived, another round of annual horrors endured, just in time for the next one. It's a truth rarely acknowledged in history books, but below stairs, the beating heart of a Victorian mansion is not just the laundry mangle or the kitchen range, it's the staff's social drama. Between hauling coal scuttles and dodging the housekeeper, there exists a secret world of crushes, courtship, and the kind of flirtation that can make even a starched apron flutter. It starts, as these things do, with a look. Perhaps it's the new footman, tall and dashing, balancing a tray with enviable steadiness. Or the kitchen maid, cheeks flushed from the heat of the stove, who makes even a sack of potatoes look glamorous. Eyes meet across a crowded scullery. Glances are exchanged. And soon, the games begin. Every encounter is loaded. An extra lump of sugar in your tea. A freshly ironed handkerchief left accidentally in your path. Or a mysterious note tucked behind the spice jars. But romance below stairs is anything but simple. Strict rules govern staff conduct. The housekeeper's gaze is sharper than a carving knife, and the butler can sense unauthorized giggling from 3 rooms away. All staff are expected to maintain decorum at all times, a regulation that's both impossible and irresistible to break. A whispered conversation on the back stairs or a smile traded by the range might escape official notice, but everyone else below stairs notices everything. Of course, there are risks. A misplaced wink can result in a week's worth of the worst chores. Being caught hand in hand by the wrong person can see you transferred to another household. Or, if you're especially unlucky, out of work entirely. Gossip spreads faster than spilled tea, and every secret rendezvous is shadowed by the possibility that someone, usually the youngest hallboy, will blab for the price of a penny sweet. Flirtation flourishes in hidden corners. The chilly scullery, the garden after sunset, the warren of passageways leading to the attic rooms. A stolen kiss in the linen cupboard. A note passed in the servants' hall. A shy compliment on Sunday best. You become adept at inventing errands. Fetching coal. Folding napkins. Polishing candlesticks. Just for a moment's proximity. Sometimes, when the day is done and the house is quiet, laughter rings out in the servants' attic. Stories are traded. And, if you're lucky, hands are held in the flickering candlelight. But love, when it comes, is both a blessing and a trial. There are alliances formed for ballroom nights, hearts broken over rival footmen, and moments when the risk seems worth it, when the smile across the dinner table is the best thing about your day. Engagements do happen, though rarely with full approval. Every marriage means 2 fewer hands to polish the silver, and thus, the housekeeper eyes every budding romance with deep suspicion. Sometimes, disaster strikes. The wrong letter discovered, a bouquet delivered to the wrong maid, or an innocent joke overheard and wildly misunderstood. Tears are shed, quietly in the linen cupboard. Hearts mend, and life goes on. In the end, the staff's romances are lived in the margins, fleeting, hopeful, and just a little bit reckless. Yet, even in the chaos, these moments of affection are the pulse of life below stairs. For every rule broken, every risk taken, there's the reward of knowing that even in the most rigidly ordered house, the heart will always find a way to be a little bit foolish. And in the world of Victorian service, sometimes foolishness is the bravest thing of all. There is no security quite as precarious as that of a Victorian maid. At any moment, the shadow of unemployment, what the staff below stairs call the spectre, can slip across your path, no matter how diligently you polish how quietly you move, or how invisible you make yourself. You live with the constant background dread that a single misstep might send you packing. Sometimes it's sudden, as shocking as a pot dropped on stone. Perhaps the family's fortunes have shifted, the master's investments soured, or a new mistress brings her own loyal entourage. The staff gather in the servants' hall, whispering over weak tea, trading rumors about redundancies and restructuring. There are no guarantees. You can be dismissed for almost anything. A chipped teacup, an ill-timed sigh, or simply for being on the wrong side of someone's bad mood. Other times, it's less about catastrophe and more about the slow accumulation of unsuitability. The housekeeper's ledger is a silent terror. Each black mark, tardy with the morning tray, a uniform not quite pristine, a forgotten bell, carries more weight than all your silent successes. The rules are precise and numerous, and a single infraction, even if accidental, is enough to nudge you closer to the door. The firings themselves are a drama. There's the formal call to the housekeeper's office, the low-voiced interview, the verdict delivered with professional regret. Your services will no longer be required. Sometimes there's a reference, but often it's just a handshake and a stern warning about future conduct. Your few belongings are packed quickly. Maybe a change of clothes, a letter home, a ribbon tucked at the bottom of the trunk, and you're shown out through the tradesman's entrance, dignity wrapped tight against the cold. The threat of unemployment is not just personal. It hangs over the whole staff like a wet cloak. Every loss is felt by all. A friend gone, a room suddenly emptier, an extra shift to cover, more work for fewer hands. The uncertainty breeds a peculiar mix of anxiety and resilience. You learn to read moods, avoid conflict, and perfect the art of becoming essential but never irreplaceable. To be noticed is dangerous, to be forgotten, fatal. Of course, there's a world beyond the front gate. If you're let go, you join the quiet queue at the registry office, lining up with other hopefuls, references in hand, practicing your best curtsy and your story of unfortunate circumstance. The registry matron inspects you like produce at a market. Teeth, posture, manners, before declaring you suitable for some new household. Sometimes you get lucky and find a better posting, a kinder mistress, a lighter workload, perhaps even a chance for advancement. Sometimes it's worse. Stricter rules, stingier pay, or a house haunted by the memory of the maid you've replaced. Yet, in spite of the fear, there's a strange hopefulness to it all. Each new beginning is a chance to start fresh, to make new friends, and, just maybe, to find a home that fits. Stories circulate among the staff of those who left service for shops, for families of their own, or who saved enough to emigrate to far-off lands where no one cares if your apron is starched. In the end, the spectre of unemployment is both threat and promise, a reminder that nothing lasts forever, and that every ending opens the door to a new story. For a Victorian maid, the future is always uncertain, but survival means learning to live with change, and, sometimes, to welcome it with open, if slightly trembling, arms. And so, as the gaslights dim and the endless staircases fall silent, you, our time-traveling listener, have survived a full day as a pretty maid in a Victorian mansion. You've hauled chamber pots at dawn, dodged disaster at dinner, and lived through more drama than the plot of a 3-volume novel. You've learned the ancient arts of silent communication, strategic snacking, and the heroic battle against dust that refuses to surrender, no matter how many hours you wage war with a feather duster and a can of beeswax. It wasn't all glamour and tea trays. You've weathered impossible uniforms, unpredictable relatives, and bosses who confuse respect with not looking directly at them. You endured endless rules, icy floors, and the looming fear of unemployment, all while knowing that one slip-up could land you back at the registry office, explaining to strangers why you're between situations. Your social life was coded glances in the scullery. Your comfort was a chipped mug of weak tea, and your big luxury was dreaming of a quieter house, or at least one with fewer stairs. But through it all, you persisted, because the true heart of the Victorian household wasn't the silver or the starched napkins, but the women and a few brave men who kept it running, one clatter of pots and whisper of secrets at a time. The pretty maids of history were survivors, comedians, silent strategists, and reluctant acrobats, holding families and households together while never quite getting the credit they deserved. So tonight, as you drift into your own soft, comfortable bed, no bells to answer, no corridor ghosts to dodge, maybe spare a thought for those whose labor kept the grandest houses running, often with aching backs and hopeful hearts. History is full of their stories, not always heroic, but always human, stubborn, and quietly resilient. And as you close your eyes, grateful for indoor plumbing and the blessed absence of chamber pots, remember, life may be messy and a little bit ridiculous, but it's also proof that people, even in the strangest circumstances, find a way to laugh, to endure, and to dream of something just a little better. Sleep well,